Hey guys, it's Ed with CloudCare WP again, and today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over kind of generalizing DNS, things you can do to try and help DNS propagate faster on your computer. Also going to cover how to clear the cache on your DNS, a few different things, and kind of explain what this all is. So let's go ahead and dive into this. First, what I want to cover is what DNS essentially is. And basically, you have name servers on the website end, not literally at the website, and then you have DNS servers that reside at your internet service provider, let's say, or you're using a third-party one, which is what I suggest. So what happens is if you make a DNS change at your name server, the DNS server that a computer may be connected to that needs to find that information, it doesn't happen in real time. So what happens is you make a DNS change and then the DNS server of the user doesn't have that information until it propagates on their server. So essentially what happens, a DNS system is kind of like a phone book. And if somebody has an outdated phone book, they're not going to have the right number to call that place. And that's really what happens. So that the ISP's DNS server every few hours grabs and repopulates that information. So that's where that delay often comes in. And if you use like Google DNS or Cloudflare DNS, these I find propagate quicker. It seems like they're regathering that information sooner than some others are. And what it does, it makes your life easier because you no longer have to wait. And then I'm going to show you how to change your DNS at your computer and a couple other things. So first, what I want to do is I want to go over what a few DNS record types are. So the most common one you'll use is an A record. And an A record takes a domain or a subdomain and it points it to an IP address of your web host or any type of server or host. And then that server or host knows to take that domain and where to map it to. Usually, if you're dealing with web design especially, it's going to go to a web server, let's say, and that web server is going to have that domain in it and know where to map it on the server itself. So Cname is similar. And what Cname is it's essentially taking a domain or a subdomain, and you're going to point that to a host. So instead of an IP address, it's going to be to a host name. And then again, that host is going to know where to route, map that subdomain. So a really common example of using a Cname in standard web design is your www. So www. is technically a subdomain. We've utilized it since pretty much the beginning, and it's really common, and you really want to use it and have it in place. So what we'll often do is we'll create an A record for the root of our domain, our base domain, and that's going to go to the IP address of our web server. And then we'll often create a Cname record, which is www, and it points to the host, which is the domain we're working on. And then at the host end, it knows to route www. accordingly, whether your website is using www as its priority URL or not. So some other Cname things might be if you're using a landing page service or something else, then often you'll take that subdomain, you'll point it to their host. Their host will then know how to route it accordingly. So that's how those work. Cname may seem like kind of like a redirect thing, and it's really not. Where it goes needs to know how to map it from there. Your MX records, those are your mail records. And then MX records have priority numbers as well, and that is exactly how it sounds. It's going to place them in priority accordingly. And then another common record you'll deal with is a text record. And a text record is basically adding a string of text into your DNS records for things to use for things like verification or security, things like that. It's really to help verify a lot of things. So that is a very basic crash course of going through the DNS records. So another thing I wanted to show you, this is a really cool tool I've used. I'm sure we've all done it, where we made the mistake of changing the IP address or something in our DNS records and realized we made a mistake and we need to go backwards, except a flux capacitor doesn't really exist and we cannot do that. So what I use is DNS Trails. And let's go ahead and start you off from scratch here. So if you go to dnstrails.com, you can enter a domain in here, and we'll go ahead and go to my agency domain. So that's us there. And in our case, what the outside world sees as our A record is actually Cloudflare, because Cloudflare is a proxy that sits between the user's DNS server and our name server. So these aren't exactly accurate, and in my example, this could cause you a headache. However, it's still, you will find this useful many times. If you click it, so what you're going to do is you're going to go to historical data, and under historical data, it's going to show you, in this case, your A record and all the A records that's been changed and how often it's been changed. This is really nice if a client changes hosts on you and doesn't let you know, and they try and give you a time frame that they cut service from. Well, you can actually look up their DNS history here, and it'll tell you the changes over time. So this is a really neat tool. I really do suggest using it. What I'm going to also show you here, and I know we're going to cover a few things. I may break this video up to simplify it, but the next thing I'm going to show you is how to flush your DNS cache. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up command prompt. Just type CMD or command in there, and it'll pop up in your bar here. And what you'll do is the command to clear your DNS cache, to flush your DNS cache, is ipconfig space / flush DNS. And that'll go ahead and flush your DNS cache. So what I'll often do is I'll flush the DNS cache after a DNS update, and then you can use a tool called NSLookup to see what the IP address is. So if we do gocloud9.net, our agency domain, it's going to show us those Cloudflare IP addresses. So if you made a DNS change, this is a way to look it up very easily. So if you do NSLookup google.com, it'll show you what Google's IP address is for their main A record. Or if you want to do a subdomain, Google actually has it go to a different IP address. I didn't realize that. So this is a couple of neat utilities you can use in here to do that. So another thing I'm going to show you is, let's say you launched a website. You have the domain configured at the host. You have WordPress in place. You're ready to migrate the site that you've developed to that domain, but you're trying to cut out downtime. You don't want any downtime. You don't have all the staging stuff set up. It's just a simple, you're taking your migrated site, throwing it on the new website, you want to make it live. So what you can often do is you can actually edit your host file in Windows with a different IP address. And we use this quite a bit. So what you're going to do is go down here and go to Notepad. And then you're not just going to open Notepad. You're going to right click on it and you're going to run it as administrator. The file we're going to edit in Notepad is actually, it's protected. You can't do it without being an administrator. So go to File, Open. And for me, it's going to default go into here because I do this all the time. And I will add this into the notes of the video, but you're going to go to C, Windows, System32, Drivers, etc. And then go to here and choose All Files. And it's called Hosts. And if you open this, it's going to allow you to create custom host records on your local machine. So for example, we might do, let's say we do this one here. So you comment it out by using a hashtag or #, set your host IP here, and then set the domain here. Don't forget, like we've talked about before, if you're going to do a www dot, that still matters. So let's say we're just matching this number here. You're going to also do www.example.com. Go ahead and click File Save. And now example.com and www.example.com are going to go to this IP address. Since you already have the domain configured at your web host, it's going to know that your computer, your device, is going to this domain and it's passing it to this IP address. And even though to the world that doesn't work, you're passing the data where it's going to know how to map it accordingly at the web host end. And then you'll be able to migrate that site over, set it all up, make your changes, make sure it all works before the world sees it. And then you can flip the DNS switch and let it propagate on its own like that. So that's some very simple tricks that you can do to make your life a little bit easier with DNS. I know sometimes making DNS changes can be very terrifying, but when you're comfortable with it, it does make your life a lot easier. What I'm also going to do here is I have Mac OS running in this virtual machine. And I'm going to show you how to do these same things in Mac OS. So let me log into this here. It's going to be a little sluggish. It's a virtual machine. And I'm going to close this so we can start you off fresh here. So what you'll do first is, let's say we want to flush the DNS. So if you go into Finder and go to Applications and then Utilities, and then you're going to open your terminal. And I should have everything I want to show you in the history here. So to flush the DNS, you're going to use this command here. And you want to make sure you have the sudo command behind it, in front of it, however you want to phrase that, because you need to run it as a super user. So add sudo, add your command, hit go. It's going to ask you for a password. Type in our password. It just flushed the DNS. You'll see a lot of commands out there that add like echo commands to actually display text. Really, that's just for your own need. It doesn't actually add any functionality. It just adds words to the end of it. So you've got that. And then I'm also going to show you how to edit the equivalent of the host file. And it's not saved in here. So you're going to do sudo nano slash hosts. Hey, I guessed right. So it's going to be sudo, which is to run it as a super user, nano, which is a text editor for command prompt, for terminal, for console, however you want to phrase that. And then we're going to add where the file is located, which is /etc/hosts. So from here, it's going to work just like it did in Windows. You're going to add your IP address here. You're going to space it out. You're going to add the domain. You're going to save this. Personally, I have found that this doesn't want to take right away from me in Mac OS. I often have to clear the cache after I did it, things like that. So, you know, food for thought. The way that you exit is you'll see here these little, we'll call them commands. The arrow up, there's probably a more appropriate word for that character. That's going to be control. And then, of course, the letter. So you made your changes, let's say. If you do control X, it's gonna typically, here, let's go back into it. Let's make a change. Now hit control X. It's going to ask you if you want to save those changes. You can hit Y and enter, or you can just hit enter. It asks you if you want to write that same file. Hit enter on that. You're good to go. So that's all you have to do there. The NSLookup command that we used in Windows, that still works here. So it is just the same. NSLookup google.com. There's your info there. So that's how you do that. So while we're in Mac, I'm going to go ahead and show you in Mac, and this will be a little broken here now, but I'm going to show you in Mac how to change your DNS server to use, I'm using Cloudflare DNS right now. That one's ranking is the fastest. And then I also like to use Google. So DNS it does affect the speed of things. So DNS is the point where you type a domain and all the minions in a box have to figure out where that domain goes to. That's your DNS server. So the faster the DNS server, the faster that lookup can happen. The faster it can say google.com goes to the 172 IP address in front of us, and then it sends it off. So the faster it happens, that speeds things up. So not only is it going to make your workflow just faster in general and make the internet a little bit faster, and people oversell it as load websites faster. We're talking about the fraction of a second, but it does make a difference. One of the main reasons I like to use a premium DNS like Google or Cloudflare is I find that it propagates faster. So when you make a DNS change for a client, I find that these DNS servers will make those changes to you faster than if you use your local ISP DNS. That they don't really, it works, it functions, that's all it really is. So what you do, and bear with me, I spent the last 6 months trying to get used to Windows from Mac, so now I got to go backwards. Go ahead and go into your settings, system preferences, and then go to network. And then you're going to choose the device. So this is important here. So if you were using Wi-Fi, for example, there's going to be a Wi-Fi device here. So make sure you're changing the DNS on the device you're connected to the internet with. In this case, it's Ethernet, and this is a virtual machine, so things are a little wonky. But select the device, select advanced, and then you see DNS up here, and then set your DNS. Let's add it, 1.1.1.1. Let's go and add 8.8.8.8, which is Google's, and then Google's secondary is 8.8.4.4. And then you just click OK. Click apply. It's going to now use those DNS. So if we open up command prompt and we do an NSLookup now, you can see that it is using this as the DNS server that we're doing the lookup with. So that's how you change that. Very simple stuff. Let's go ahead and minimize this here. And I'm going to show you how to do this in Windows as well. So personally, I like to use Control Panel. I am not a fan of the changes that Microsoft has made to make life easier for everybody else. They got us used to one way for 20 years and then simplified it, and now I can't find anything. So if we go into Control Panel, and then you go to Network and Sharing Center, and then we're going to go to Change Adapter Settings. This is the same concept. So find the device we're talking about here. In this case, it's going to be this, my Ethernet. Right-click, choose Properties. Find your Internet Protocol version 4, TCP/IP version 4. Highlight it, click Properties. Use the following DNS. By default, if you're using all automatic settings, which most of you will be, obtain DNS server address automatically will be selected. Choose this here. Set this to 1.1.1. And then you could set the other to a secondary DNS of your choice. You can do 8.8.8.8 if you want, or nothing at all like I'm doing. Click OK. Click Close. You are set. So that is all done. Close all this. We're not using it. So that's it. So I know this was long, and I know we kind of went over a lot, and I know I can be a fast talker, but I really think that this may demystify some of the DNS stuff that people are concerned about when you're trying to do things. This will break those walls down for you. So please leave us some comments of what you think. If you know a faster, better way than what I did, please share it. You know, I definitely embrace that. So please pass that information along. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. We're happy to answer any of them. So good luck.